Representatives. Is Aubrey Robertson in the house? Aubrey is our DA candidate here in McLennan County. He's got a absolutely scary opponent, so we really need to fall in behind him.
Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. You know, and I think some of the other candidates will agree. One of the questions I get asked most people is, why do you want to be district attorney? And I think it's important, first of all, to understand what the district attorney's office does. They are the chief law enforcement officer of our county. They are the ones that make the most difficult decisions about who to charge with a crime and what crime to charge them with, when to seek the death penalty, when children need to go to the Texas Juvenile Justice Center. These are incredibly important things that the district attorney's office has to consider. But for me, what I tell people is it's about domestic violence. As a prosecutor, domestic violence cases were some of the most difficult, but also fulfilling cases that I ever prosecuted. And let me tell you, these women who had been beaten, sometimes within an inch of their life, would sit in my office and they would cry to me. And they would say, please don't prosecute him. Please don't send my husband to jail. I need him. Our kids need him. And they would beg and plead with me to dismiss the case or just let it go. And as I talked to these women and as I got to know them, I realized what they needed was a support system. Because like all domestic abuse survivors, they had been isolated from their friends and family. They had been told they were worthless. And they needed somebody to hold their hand and say, I'm going to be there with you all the way through. And so when I told them that, when I would take them by the hand and say, I'm going to be in trial with you. Look at me the entire time. When I'm asking you questions, focus on me. Don't look at him. And I'll make sure that he never does this to you again. And it doesn't matter how severe the injuries were, whether it was a black eye or I had a case where a lady was literally beaten with a pipe. And she still asked me to dismiss that case. But it doesn't matter about the injury, because what these women need is our support, not our judgment. They need our help, our grace. That's what they need from us. And so when people ask me why I want to be a prosecutor, it's for victims of crime like that. Not just domestic violence, but all crime. Even crimes against small businesses. My father's a small business owner. I can remember growing up when people would break into his office, he would take our dog and his gun and he'd go sleep in the lobby of his business because the police weren't doing anything. We've got to protect small business owners too. They are a vital member of our community. So my name is Aubrey Robertson. I have the experience to be district attorney. My opponent has never served as a prosecutor for a day in his life. Our last two district attorneys here in McLennan County have never served as a prosecutor for a day in their lives, and we saw how those administrations ended. So I ask for your vote. I ask for you to tell other people that I am the most qualified candidate in this race. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I really appreciate it.
Is Lucianne Sanchez Miramontes in the hall? Okay, I think that's it. You know, there is only one solution to the problems we have right now. It's to vote. The Supreme Court is not going to help us. Vote. Joe Biden can't help us until we vote. The moderate Republicans are not going to help us until we vote and show them the way. So if you're a party chair like I am, and I'm learning one, you got to examine your time. If it doesn't cause people to vote, that's not a good use of your time. Don't let the Republicans distract you by messing with your polling places. Just get people out to vote. Thank you very much. We got some more folks from Marlin that have come.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Bigham Derry. I am the candidate for the Falls County Judge. I was born and raised in Marlin, Texas with 13 other siblings. We did not live in the best of conditions, but we had love. I am here running today because in our county, we still have issues such as infrastructure, which are homes that need to be repaired. We have roads and bridges, which is probably in every county. We sometimes will tell each other, okay, if I go down the road and fall in a hole, you know to come get me. So that's how bad the streets can get to be. We have public safety. Mr. Cedric Davis has talked a lot about our fire and how we need the service of the fire, our EMS. We need to have more people who are there and available. My mom recently passed. We called for the ambulance to come, and we called and we called. And when the ambulance did get there, it was so happened that one of my sisters is a nurse, and she was the one that kept my mom going. So we out in the rural areas really do need the public safety. We need EMS care, and we need it just as swiftly as anyone else does. And we also need jobs. We need jobs. We need to also have new businesses come into our area, but it's very difficult to do when you don't have good water, when your sewer, everything is all dated. You need sewer, water, sewer, these things that's going to help anybody, housing. We have issues even today where we have a new principal who's still looking to trying to find a decent home that he wants his family to come and live in Marlin, Texas. We need one thing that will take care of all of this, and that's revenue. I am a grant writer. I have earned 3 master's degrees. I have a bachelor's degree. In my background, I have worked with the U.S. Department of Justice. I've also worked with the Aerospace and Defense. I was the senior contract administrator for the B-2 bomber before anybody knew about the B-2 bomber. So I have a lot of experience in knowing how to get and to maintain and how to actually, let's talk about parts. And, they were saying a $500 this and $200. Yes, it did cost that, because when you're in an airplane going at extraordinary speeds, you need to make sure that commode that's in there is going to stay right where it's supposed to be. And sometimes it does take a $500 screw to do that. So again, my name is Cynthia Bigham Derry. I am a candidate for county judge, and my platform is for everyone. Everybody wants the best that they can have in any state, city, wherever we are. But in the rural community, we need to step up. We need to find the revenue, and we need to make our people proud of where they are, no matter where they decide they want to live. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Ryan. I'm running for County Commissioner Precinct 4. I'm here today. Cedric and Miss Cynthia has said it all about Falls County. And we really need help, and we need to grow and get better, get the job, get the money coming into our county. So also our state representatives, Democrat representatives are running. I want to invite all you, everyone and all, to our Summer Souls to the Polls. It's going to be held in Lott, Texas next Saturday. That's August the 20th at 2 p.m. at the Lott School Gym. So I'm inviting everyone to come out, help support us so we can turn Falls County blue.
Okay, today, we are going to move to our keynote, and we're thrilled that Mike could make it today. He's like Beto, he's all over the place. And just amazing how we can have a man of so much credentials and so much background is conducive to good, strong Democratic government running for lieutenant governor. And he's going to be our speaker next. And so let's give a big round of welcome to Central Texas. Our next lieutenant governor, Mike Collier.
Thanks, everyone. Well, thank you. My name is Mike Collier, and I've got Dan Patrick on the ropes. We're going to beat him. You going to help me? Carl, I first want to say, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for all you do. I mean, one of the joys of the work that we're in is we know each other, we like each other, we trust each other. And Carl, you are always there and have been for as long as I've been working on this. So thank you so much. And I also want to shout out to Chairman Hinojosa. Chairman, you'll remember this was about 9 years ago that I showed up on your doorstep and I said, I want to run for statewide office. And you said, well, you've got to be crazy because we can't win. We're not going to win this year. And I said, well, sometimes there's more important things than winning. Sometimes you just got to fight for what you believe in. Remember that? And then Chairman said, well, how do I know you're not a Republican? And I said, well, give me a few years and I'll show you. And I have. And I've been on this for 9 years. So it's always good to see you. And then Bill Brandon, my good friend Bill Brandon. Chairman was so worried that maybe I was a Republican that he sent Bill down to see me. So Bill drove from Sulphur Springs. Remember this, Bill? And you went down to Kingwood, Texas. This was in the summer of 2013. We sat at a Starbucks and he said, well, do you know anybody in politics? No. Do you have any money yourself? No. Do you have any donors? No, not really. Well, I think you ought to run anyway. He said, it would be good to have somebody just go around and make a sensible presentation on property taxes. And I said, okay, Bill, I'll take you up on it. So here we are 9 years later, and I'm honored to be your nominee. And thank you so much for your support. And now the job is to beat Dan Patrick, and I can beat him, I can tell you. We have to beat him, don't we? You all have seen the same polls that I've seen in my particular race, 4 points away. And that's very, very good news. 4 years ago, to put this into perspective, at this stage of the game, we were 9 points away. And when the dust settled, we only lost by 4.8. Do the math. This is a winnable race. And we know where those votes are. And we're going to go get them. And a lot of those votes are in rural Texas. And I'm so happy to be here, to be working with you. Here, a round of applause for rural Texas and Democrats in rural Texas. And you all are absolutely the most persistent and determined of them all. And it's a real joy to campaign with you. And I'm looking forward. We're going to be barnstorming again in a big way, starting in about 5 days. I had a primary to run and I had to work hard on it. Well, I'm honored to now be your nominee and we're going to get back out there. I thought I would start my remarks by sharing a little story about what happened to me in Marble Falls, Texas. Sherry, you were there, right? You remember this? This was our very first campaign outing of this election cycle. Carl, were you there? Yeah, you were there, Marble Falls, Texas. And you were there. And so this was, I want to say this was July or August of last year. July, a very hot day. And they had me up on a bandstand and then there was outdoors and there was this field area and there were a lot of good Democrats there and we were enjoying each other's company. And I was talking about the things we needed to do in the state, which I'll touch on in a minute. But we all know the work that we need to do in the state and we all know the failures of the Republican Party. And I'm making this speech. And here wanders up to the stage, but some poor old cantankerous MAGA Republican, you remember that? With his MAGA hat on, and he started to threaten me. He started to threaten me like this was going to get violent. Well, they don't teach you in candidate training how to handle it. I didn't quite know what to do. I stood there with my microphone in my hand, and I thought, well, I'm not sure exactly how to deal with this. I didn't feel threatened. I figured I could lick him. But then it occurred to me, and I said, look, where's Dan Patrick? I said, has Dan Patrick ever come out to talk to you? Has your Republican ever come out to talk to you about public schools or ever talked to you about water infrastructure? Has he come here to talk to you about the grid? Has he ever come here to talk to you about the problem we have with property taxes or that we should expand Medicaid? Has he ever come to talk to you about anything? Dead silence. No, well, I still hate you because you're a Democrat. Well, we won't get his vote. And perhaps he'll be out of jail soon. He got into trouble. They arrested him. But we don't need his vote. But what we need are the votes of Texans who know that the state affects them in their lives. It's a very simple proposition. This, in my opinion, is how we must campaign and go out and say the following sorts of things, like Democrats are for great public education. You with me on that? Any teachers or retired teachers in the room? Put your hand up. First of all, thank you so much for making the decision to teach. It's absolutely essential. And I want everybody to know, and I talk about this everywhere I go, let's talk about retired teachers. Retired teachers don't get Social Security. They don't get survivor benefits on Social Security. They're dependent solely on the state, and they haven't had a cost of living adjustment in nearly 20 years, and that's wrong, and we're going to fix that, right, teachers? And we need smaller class sizes so teachers can teach, and we need special education teachers so that teachers can do a good job and tend to the students properly. And we need counselors who build relationships with these children, and that's one of the ways we're going to stay safe. And we have to make sure that our schools are safe, and we don't do that by arming teachers. Teachers don't want to be armed to stay safe, do you? No. And in rural Texas, Texans are passionate about public education, and they don't like vouchers because vouchers are for vultures. Have you heard me say that? So we're going to fight hard for public education. What else are we going to fight for? The property tax system isn't fair. It's broken. And if you own a home or a small business, you are being ripped off by Republicans. You're being cheated. And there's no way that we can possibly put more money into public education if we ask homeowners to pay more, because we're already paying more to begin with, because the Republicans have not required the large corporate interests to pay their fair share. So we got to hold them accountable and close those loopholes and put that money to work for Texans. Do you agree with that? And I've been saying for years now, I am Dan Patrick's worst nightmare. I'm a Democrat, I'm an auditor, I get lied to for a living. When it comes to tax policy, I know where all the bodies are buried. Sorry to say that. My parents used to hate when I would say that. So we're going to solve that problem. What other problems are we going to solve for rural Texas? Let's talk about expanding Medicaid and hospitals closing. That is a real crisis for rural Texans. And what has Dan Patrick done about that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Democrats know that we have to solve the rural health care problem. We got to keep those hospitals open. Expanding Medicaid is part of it. If we have to do more, we'll do more, because that's what Texans in rural Texans deserve. And then we got to have broadband. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Why haven't we done that? That may be the best investment we could possibly make. You know, the commercial world is changing dramatically. And you can work for a high-tech company and you can live in rural Texas at the same time. Raise your family there, be a great member of the community, go to restaurants and pay taxes and do the rest, but you have to have internet to do that. We'll be left behind if we don't do that. So expanding broadband solves all sorts of problems. Let's talk about water. Water is a disaster. You know, I talked about water for as long as I've been working on this, and nothing's being done about it. And now we have another hot summer. And I can tell you, farmers and ranchers should get really hurt by this. Bankruptcies are coming. They're selling their cattle. What have we done about water resources and water infrastructure? We have outgrown our water capacity in the state. Now, are we going to fix it or are we not going to fix it? I say Democrats say we're going to fix it. You with me on that? I'm not sure what else I've left off. What have I left off? Oh, we have to fix the damn grid. I think you can agree with that, right? I think we need criminal justice reform. I see my good friend Susan Hayes here. I think we need to legalize marijuana. Anybody for that? I'm for it, and I've always been for it, but I confess I tiptoed around it 4 years ago because my dear mom was still living then, and I didn't want to get back into me in the 70s in the UT campus. But now she's in heaven helping me up there. And I can honestly say that I have felt we needed to legalize it ever since Pink Floyd came out with their first album. And as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of that story. So Susan, you and I are in this together. By the way, I'm delighted that I saw Jay Kleberg. A round of applause for Jay Kleberg. Very happy to have seen Janet Dudding, who was here a while ago. We had a chance to say hello. Then we have Luke Warford. And then we have, who am I missing? Rochelle Garza, that I've campaigned with. And then there's this really, really bright fella from El Paso. He's gonna go a long way. Beto O'Rourke. Is this a strong ticket or what? This is a ticket that we can be proud of. And the great local candidates that are running, which is just fabulous. So here's the deal. We got to win. Because not only do we have the problems that I mentioned, which are not new, there's no surprise in anything that I said. And by the way, there's not one of your neighbors out there that would take issue with anything that I have just said about fixing the grid and water infrastructure and public education, expanding Medicaid, and making sure that property taxes are fair. There's not one thing any rural Republican would object to in what I just said. The problem is that they don't know, and they're going to find out. All we have to do is win and give them a taste of good, community-oriented, sensible leadership. It'll change everything in the state. And in 3 months, that's what we're going to do it. Do you agree with that? And I want to say one other thing. I believe in a woman's right to choose. Do you? Yeah. I think there's no question that if somebody's pregnant, the only person that can make those decisions, those life and death decisions, that very, very complex decision is the woman. And Republicans agree as well. Not all of them, not all of them, but I can tell you in my travels around the state, I'm meeting with countless pro-choice Republicans. They've always been there, but they've always had choice. That's been taken away, and they're coming across and they're voting for us because that is morally the right thing to do. Freedom is always the right thing to do. Do you agree? And also the freedom to live and love as you wish. For the LGBT community, the freedom to live and love as you wish, in freedom, not to have the legislature tell you. And the freedom to vote, and the freedom to have your voice count by getting rid of gerrymandering. That's what Democrats are for, right? We stand for freedom. And again, and again, and again, there's nothing in that your Republican neighbors would object to. Nothing. We just have to hold our heads high as Democrats and tell our story, and you watch. And those Republicans will come running because they'll realize that we are right. And that's why we're Democrats, and that's why you're so good for this state. Do you agree? Yeah. So I'll come out to Will Texas all day long, and I can't wait to see you on the campaign trail. Now, I'm told that we can do some question and answer, which is my favorite part of the evening. Or afternoon. Does anybody know where I am or what the time it is? I know where it is, almost noon in McLennan County. We have some time for some question and answer. I'm sure I left some things off, so I'd love to get into it. Aaron, please. Get rid of gerrymandering. I am so glad you asked that. First of all, I believe gerrymandering is the root cause. I'm going to give you a little extended answer if I may. That's the luxury of question and answer. I can get really geeky on you without anybody objecting. I think that gerrymandering is the root cause of our political crisis in this country. And the reason why I believe that is the system produces partisan warriors and not statesmen. If you are a representative and you go to Austin or you go to Washington, and everybody in your district is your party, then your incentive to get reelected is to be a warrior, fight the other party. And that is why it isn't working. Now imagine if we didn't have gerrymandered districts. Imagine if we had an independent redistricting commission, draw our districts so that every voice and every vote counted. Then you would have representatives that go to Austin or Washington. They do their best and they come home to a district that has both Democrats and Republicans. In order for them to keep their job, they have to bring people together. You don't get reelected by tearing people apart. You get reelected by bringing people together and finding common ground. That would produce a political world full of statesmen and stateswomen instead of partisan warriors. And I can't think of anything more important as Lieutenant Governor than to fight for a Texas that has independent redistricting commissions and do that now. Do you agree? Yeah. And I'll say this, Democrats know this. Many Republicans know this too, because they recognize that we have a real crisis in this country and that we have to do something about it. And so I think we go through an independent redistricting commission and we'll fight like gangbusters to do it. And thank you for that question. Thank you. Cedric.
What is your opinion on the down ballot ticket?
Well, we got a strong down ballot ticket. Witness my friend Cedric and Aaron. No, I think, listen, we're all in this together. And I don't view it as a sort of a top, who's on whose coattails? Let me put it that way. Who's sitting on whose coattails? We are sitting on the coattails of the down ballot candidates. Because you are the ones that are boots on the ground, knocking on doors, building those relationships, day in and day out, projecting our values into the community, and that is so important. And so I'm very, very appreciative. And I want to say to folks that are thinking about giving money, don't send me money. Send it to Cedric, send it to Aaron, send it to your down ballot candidates. We can raise money. And with my team as a witness, I've been saying this for years, everywhere I go. I mean, if you're running statewide, you have access to donors. So that's my job, is to get them to contribute to this. But if you have a relationship with your statewide candidates, give them money. I mean, it matters so much, not just that they can spend it to get our message out, but there's a real psychological boost. It's a way to say thank you. And if you set up a monthly payment, then you get to say thank you once a month. And so, great question. Sherry?
Mike, what will you do on your first day in office?
I'll read the tweet that you sent me that morning. Or text. Sherry sends me a text every morning. Here's the hot news flashes overnight. Be prepared. Every morning I get a text from Sherry. No, the question is, what's the first thing you'll do? I'll say this. That's a pretty standard reporter's question. And so it used to seem like a difficult question to answer because there's so many things. There's not just one thing. For all the wrong reasons, with great sadness in my heart, it has now become a very easy question to answer. We must change the policies that will take the lives of Texans. We must change the policies that will take the lives of Texans. This trigger law, as a consequence of Roe v. Wade being overturned, has sentenced countless Texas women to their death. We must change that immediately. A grid that fails has already claimed the lives of hundreds of Texans. It's going to happen again. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So we have to do that. This whole idea that teachers are scared to death of a gunman coming in and killing them and their students. We have to address those right away. When I think about the priorities of becoming lieutenant governor, we must address those policies that, if they aren't fixed, will cost Texans their lives. Those are the most important things. And then we also want to change the tone around here, in my opinion, where the state works for us. They work for us. If we want good schools, then they roll up their sleeves and figure out how to give us good schools. And if we feel like our property taxes aren't fair because the large corporate interests are cheating us, which they are, then they'll roll up the sleeves and solve that problem too. We have a lot of work to do, but we have some very, very, very urgent matters. And finally, we must never, ever lose sight of the fact that our democracy is in serious, serious trouble. We must protect the right to vote. We must protect the right to vote. And I support a holiday so people can get the day off of work so that they can vote. I support making it very easy for people to vote. Voter fraud, the assertion of voter fraud in and of itself is a fraud. We can be trusted as Americans to vote, and we must vote. So those are the important things we have to do. Yes, please.
I don't know how much else I should say about this, but Florida, they have this security governor, but it is a progressive state because they do have the medical marijuana. They did get the criminal felons to get back to the voting rolls. And the reason why they were able to do that is because in Florida, people are allowed to petition to change their state's constitution. In the state of Texas, we've been stuck with these Tea Party constitutional amendments to go and vote for, and other people in Texas don't have a voice in that. So I want to know if you'll support a constitutional amendment so other people can petition the state to get the things that we want, instead of these people putting these things out there that don't even give us a reason to go and vote in these elections, where there's only 1, 2, 3% of the people voting to actually change our state's constitution. It just doesn't seem to me like we're even putting anything out there to get people to go to the polls. But if other people could petition to get the people out there on the issues that we care about, then we can get a higher voter turnout in those elections.
Did everyone hear that? That's a very, very important question. And before I answer it, I want everybody to know what the question was, so we'll repeat it. I'll repeat it with the microphone.
Amendment added in there instead of the Republicans just writing what they want
Right.
for us to go vote.
Yeah, the question is, can we have it so that citizens petition to amend our constitution? So we're not beholden to a gerrymandered legislature that does not represent our point of views? The answer is yes. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And the answer is yes.
Can you be more specific about developing more of these?
Yeah, so water resources, well, that's a hard issue, and it depends on where you are. Well, how do you solve the problem? For example, if you go into West Texas, there's a reservoir that we rely on, the Ogallala Reservoir. It's being drawn down at a rate that means it'll go dry. So we have to get water in, we have to recharge that reservoir. If you go to the Gulf Coast, we have more water than we can handle. We have floods and we have problems. And then if you go in Central Texas, you have a problem where you have communities that are outgrowing their local resources. So they go out into the farming community and get these water developers, which is a real problem for the farms because the way the water works in Texas, it's called the big well rule. You know, you can drill a well and drain water from all sorts of land around you, and there's nothing to prevent you from doing it. And then we have real issues with conservation. We waste water like you can't believe because of land use and many other things. So to solve the water problem, we have to solve all of those problems. We have to do it all really quite well. We have to learn to manage the water more than we can lead with storm surge protection and drainage in parts of the state. Where I live in Houston, we need storm surge protection and we need drainage. If you go to the Rio Grande Valley, they have a drainage issue. It's terrible. So we have to solve that problem. We have to be able to move water to parts of state where you can recharge. And then we have to change the water usage rules. So this big well rule is called the rule of capture doesn't unfairly penalize farmers and ranchers who need that to keep their running. And then we need conservation, which comes down to land use and so many other things. We have to do all of those things, Carolyn, and we have to do them well. And it's not easy. It's a little bit like climate change and energy. You must first decide that we have a problem that we need to solve, and then spend time talking about it and doing all of the complex things that you have to do and getting communities to do it. So the answer is in there. There's not a magic wand, but I will say this, you start by dealing with storm surge protection and conservation. I mean, if we just did conservation, we'd buy ourselves many years before we could deal with the more complex aspects of it. Right behind you. Yeah.
If you are elected, you pledge to try to get Texas to join a few of the other states that have dedicated their delegates to the electoral college to vote for the person who gets the popular vote in the nation.
Interesting question. Well, that's the first time I've seen that. So I don't know. I'll have to think about it and get back to you. I honestly, I haven't been confronted with that question before. So allow me to think about that and come back to you. What do you think? Tell me.
Well, it's a way of getting around having to have a constitutional amendment. If Texas joins, I think the 19 or 20 other states who have passed a law saying that their electoral candidates will vote for the person who won the popular vote rather than
Right.
people that are state voted for.
Well, I would say this. I mean, one of the luxuries of having run for 9 years is if I don't know the answer to something, I can say I don't know the answer, that I haven't really thought about it. So I'd like to hear your point of view more fully. And I'd like to get to talk to others and come back to you. It's a great question. And I'm glad you have forewarned me because I do intend to get elected, which means in about 120 days, I get sworn in and I have to deal with these issues. So I'm glad you brought that to my attention.
It's just a way of making sure that the person who wins the popular vote
Gets our electors here. Yeah. Thank you for raising that. And I will do my homework and I will tell you my point of view. Thank you. Yes, right next to you.
Regardless of the biggest in the world, Texas, and working with the counties to get that implemented when it's really needed. Not according to internet providers or federal data, but we're needed at my house, my doctor's office, my school.
Well, I certainly agree with the point of view that we have to make sure that it's fair and it makes sense and everybody is included in this. You know, one of the things I don't like about Republican leadership in the state is they'll say they're out solving a problem and then there's special treatment for their people. And then the rest of us. And we also have an example that we're dealing with now with phone charges. You've probably seen this, but there is the telephone companies don't make money in rural, but we do want rural to have phone coverage. So we all pay into that pot. And so folks that are in the cities pay more for their phones, so it subsidizes the telecommunication companies provide. I'm not sure that that's working so well because people are going to start objecting to that fee, and I think it'll land on negatively on rural. There's also another suggestion that's come my way, which is that you let the local universities handle it because they have the infrastructure and they're close by. And so let everybody be an outgrowth from the various colleges and universities, which would be the platform for broadband. Frankly, I don't know exactly how we're going to do it. I don't know the precise modalities of it, but I can tell you what the goal should be. The goal should be that everybody has access to internet, that it's distributed as fairly as possible. And then I think it needs to be paid for fairly. And that comes down to the large corporations that do business in this state will be much more profitable because we have broadband all around the state. And they have to chip in their fair share and we'll chip in too. But the paying for it has to be done fair and it can't land entirely on the backs of rural. I mean, it can't land just on you. This can't be a contract where we'll give you broadband if you pay us X, Y, or Z, because there are an awful lot of folks who are making an awful lot of money, will make an awful lot more money because we have that internet service and they have to chip in too. So that would be the broad frame. How specifically we do it, there's work to be done, but that should be the broad frame and the aspiration. Thank you. I think we have time for like two more. So I know that your hand's up. Please.
Here on a wedding. We're all, unless you're Native American immigrants, how do you plan to write the government of immigration and border affects even where I grew up in Texas, people have moved in there. How do you plan to do it fairly and justly and not separate families?
Well, separating families is a terrible idea. Cruelty is never the solution to any problem we face as human beings, ever, ever, ever. Whatever we do, we have to do it consistent with our values and with the compassion that we hold in our hearts as Texans. I think Texans are compassionate people. I'm amazed that our political leaders, Democrat and Republican, state and federal, can't seem to solve a problem that when you talk to ordinary Texans seems really quite simple, which is we are a nation of immigrants. We should welcome immigrants. When here, they should earn their way into citizenship just like our forefathers did. And it shouldn't be difficult, and it should be fair, and it can't be hard. And I don't know why the politicians won't do it. I actually am going to criticize all of them because I think they like us fighting over this for different reasons. Now, immigration policy is federal policy. However, I don't punt on anything. It might be federal policy, but this is our community. This is our state. And I think it would do us all a world of good to provide some leadership to say, let's change our immigration laws so that we welcome immigrants. We need the work. It's good for the economy. And they pay taxes while they're here and they have a path to become citizens and they earn their way into citizenship, which I think everybody wants. And our system doesn't do that. And then when it comes to the border, we need to have a safe and secure border. Democrats are for that just as surely as Republicans. The Republicans are not doing a good job, in my opinion. We're spending an awful lot of money. Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott are sending an awful lot of money to the border. But when you go down there and ask them, what do you get for that money? Are you actually getting a job done? Nobody knows. It's the most expensive publicity stunt in the history of the state. So I think we ought to be rational about it. And it needs to make sense. And then to the extent that we have asylum policies and the rest that make sense, we have to have the infrastructure to deal with the humanity of it. And I can tell you that I went down to Brownsville, or no, I think it's in McAllen. I went and saw Sister Norma Pimentel. She's the head of Catholic Charities down on the border. She deals with families that come across. If they have children, they present themselves to the Border Patrol. Their Border Patrol takes them to a facility where she helps them get cleaned up, minor medical attention, make the phone call, get the bus ticket, go to see their families, all in accordance with the law. And if she wasn't doing that for them, no one would be doing that for them. So we don't have the infrastructure. And a big part of our not living up to our values as Americans is that we don't have the infrastructure to deal with the human beings. We can't even enforce our own laws without resorting to cruelty, which is just not right. So the answer to our border and immigration problem is in there. And I'm very critical of Abbott and Patrick, who don't really seem to wish to solve the problem. They just want to earn votes by making people angry. And it doesn't matter whether we have a Democrat or a Republican in the Oval Office. The Lieutenant Governor should be on the phone with the federal government and the president every day of the week until we work together to solve the problem and stop trying to make politics out of something that affects people in their lives. That's what I think. Thank you very much. Okay, I think one more question. If there's one more question, and then yes, sir.
20 miles west here in the middle of Limestone County, which is the middle of nowhere. We built a house, we had to have the electrical system extended, so we're looking into the line. If a tree falls in Limestone County, you're not gonna hear about us. Anyway, so I have solar panels. And we also catch rainwater, that's our solar water. And anyway, we have solar panels in that house, but we got them because the federal government gave us tax incentives for and you know they increased the solar panels
Right.
areas. And so when the government releases money like that, there's all kinds of companies that pop up to help them scale. And so I was overcharged for solar panels, and it was installed at competent people. But what people don't know is when solar panels are overproducing, they're feeding power back into the grid.
Right.
Now I'm a retired electrician, and I believe we can do a lot to fix the damn grid by having increasing residential solar and wind power in houses that have kind of a distributed system. Would you consider that as an alternative or a possible way to fix the damn grid?
Oh, absolutely. That's, yeah, oh, absolutely. That's one of the major things. Absolutely. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have solar panels, but if the power goes out, you can't access your solar panel power. You have to sell your power to the grid, and then the grid brings you power, and you're without any power, which is dumb. We have a dumb grid. We have a stupid grid. We have a grid that was designed in the old days. We need a smart grid because, you know, there's a couple of things that are happening in the state. One, if you look at the portfolio of generation that's renewable, or intermittent wind and solar, it's now on a hot day above 30%. In terms of, so the wind production from wind and solar is about 30% of our total electricity. Our margin, our power margin, in other words, the excess that you want, a little bit of excess to make sure that if you misjudge demand, the margin's only about 8% on a hot day. So if your intermittent is 30%, your margin's 8%, you don't. But we've got enough solar, we got enough rooftop, we got enough cars, Ford F-150s with a battery in it. It's charging when we have more power than we need, discharging when we need that power. So what we need is a smart grid technology that we don't have, and we need to invest in it very rapidly. And then if you think of the challenge, excuse me, that I'm going to face if I'm honored to be your lieutenant governor. It takes time to fix the grid because what we have to do is build generation capacity. So we're going to be very, very alert to short tents for poles. You know the expression, the long pole in the tent, short pole in the tent. We're going to be looking for those quick hit investment technologies that immediately take the pressure off the grid, and smart grid technology, as you suggest, will be at the heart of that. So I completely agree. And boy, we got to fix the damn grid. Okay, I'm getting a high sign. Carl says I got to go. I just want to leave you with one thought. Anybody here from West Texas? Anybody from West Texas come here? Okay, West Texas. I want to tell you a story about campaigning in rural Texas from 2018. One of my favorite stories. There's a little town between Amarillo and Lubbock called Tulia. You ever been to Tulia? So you can buy gas and a Subway sandwich there if you need to. So we were running around 4 years ago. We weren't spending any money campaigning. We were going to West Texas, but we didn't expect anybody to know me in West Texas because we didn't have the money. And so we stopped in Tulia to get gas, and the old man went in and bought sandwiches. That's me. And I was carrying the sandwiches back out to the car. And it was nearly election day. And here comes this Republican in an old pickup truck. I could tell by the bumper stickers and the hat he was wearing. This guy's a Republican. And he drives up to me slowly. I thought, uh-oh. And he rolls his window down. And I thought, uh-oh. And he says, "Hey, are you Mike?" That's how they say it in West Texas. And I said, "Yeah, why?" Wanted to let him know I spoke what he did. He said, "I hope you beat that scoundrel." And he drove off. That's a true story. And we can beat him. With your help, we can beat him. So thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Let's go out there and win this, okay? All right, thank you.
Okay, everybody hungry? Yeah. It's box lunch time. What we're gonna do is break for lunch. You'll pick up your box lunch out here on this, I guess that's the east side of this auditorium, around the corner where the cafeteria is. And check in, if you would, with Allison Manning, so she can check you off the list if you make sure you ordered your lunch. And then you can go to one of two breakout sessions. One will be in the cafeteria, which is where nearby where the lunchbox is. The second one will be down this hall here to a classroom where you go for another breakout session. There'll be 45 minutes each. They're back to back. You can go to one or either. The breakout sessions are going to be very valuable. They are going to be presented by two of our key allied organizations within the Texas Democratic Party that have worked out here in Central Texas, South Texas, and East Texas. Kirk Pate and Becky Schenker are a part of an organization called Blue Up Texas. They do fantastic digital work with vans. They're going to be given one session. They're going to be working with Sherry Matula, who's with an organization called Sisters United Alliance, a group out of Houston. Their background is trying to locate and motivate Democratic voting women with a low propensity for voting in the surrounding rural counties outside Harris County. That, in a nutshell, is what Sherry does, Sherry Matula, in that organization. They're going to be in one session. The other session is one of our fantastic county chairs in Kendall County. Laura Bray should be conducting a session that will be of real interest to the county chairs and precinct chairs, where you can bounce things off each other and talk about strategy, what's working, and all these things. And Laura's got a really good highway billboard project going that you want to hear about. So I urge you to go to those two sessions. At 1:30, we'll be back in the chair, and then we'll have 4 fantastic discussions from some of our TDP staff people on key subjects. That those presentations are excellent. So you're not going to leave this place without good information. You will have a lot of things you can take home with and work with. One of the presentations will be relationship voter registration with Hannah Howell. voter registration director. Then there's voter protection. Juan Marino will be given a presentation about voter protection, what we see problem areas in the polls, right? And then we'll have a van and data open discussion with Sam Gostomsky. I hope I pronounced that right. He will be giving that presentation. And John Mott, Deputy Political Director, is going to be giving a presentation called Talking to Voters. So it's all worthwhile. So let's go have lunch and meet back here at 1:30. Thank you. Let me address that real quick. We were preparing to hear from Rochelle Garza. She could not be here. So we arranged to have a Zoom feed with Rochelle. It was all set up in our equipment set up this morning. We realized there was, we had a connectivity issue, so it can't happen. Same thing with Beto, but we didn't have a commitment from Beto, but we were planning on that. So there's your answer.
Hey, Carl. Quick, like a rabbit, quick. Rochelle Garza's staff just said, hey, is Rochelle not going to speak anymore? You were gonna do a phone call.
I asked them, but they didn't respond.
Are we in the cafeteria? Is ours?
You're in the
I'm
classroom.
gonna have her
And the
call.
classroom is down that hallway?
Does she have your cell phone?
Yes, I gave her my cell phone.
I'm gonna have them call you.
I had them call me, but they did not call and they did not respond to my email.
Well, they're here now. I actually got the Zoom working.
You did get it working?
I don't have any audio. I got the video working. And I got logged in with your Zoom account and started the Zoom conference and all of it worked.
So the best we can do was the phone feed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the classroom down this hallway?
Yeah, come right down to get your lunch, Sherry. Come right down this hallway, and that's going to be Katie's classroom. You'll be coming right down here.
Oh, no.
You're being called right now by this guy. His name's Solace. Nothing else. Let's get the mic. We'll G is into your, up of your computer. Here, here. Oh, well, how we do that?
They can't make the call, they don't know how to. I asked him to call in at 1:30.
He called in on the Zoom.
Well, you know, that's their campaign, they don't communicate with each other.
Well, you gotta be real quick with, you just gotta be on top of it.
I know, I was expecting perhaps
They have
a phone call, but I was ahead of the game because I emailed the same guy.
Jack,
Yes.
Jack Stoller.
I think he sent it out.
Yeah, that's who's on the call.
Yeah, well, I didn't even open the meeting, you know? I told him plenty of time. If he couldn't do it. Plenty of time. That's why I offered 1:30. That's the best we can do. He's spending this.
Well, a lot of some, it's just a black screen.
All right, sir.
What is this guy doing to?
Right here.
No, that's not it.
Well, no, this is.
Oh, the
G.
monitor. That's, okay, so that's, and then we need something to go. It's so much sense.
And it worked. G. G is going to my computer.
Right, yeah. we got that. Let me just look. So this is the monitor working. B. Right.
I am your last presentation. That I have sent to you.
Oh, you're the one. If you said it right here, I'll take care of it. Thank you for bringing it by.
Yeah.
Mine, right? You've always been in trouble.
Always wait some last minute.
Okay, that shouldn't be pushed to one thing. So somehow or another, somebody pushed two, which is blank. No, I'm not getting Wow. You're lucky I got a map. Well, actually, I don't. Look at you. That's the best thing. Nice. I'm sorry, we can't use this today. You're like, oh, yes, you can. Nice. My favorite thing of the day.
Saved it as a pumpkin. Or a PDF.
Okay, can you show me real quick?
Thank you so much for speaking,
Is
sir.
it this way?
So,
Oh, I wanted it in the keynote. Oh, good.
you want to see now? There's the board city council. And then I did a document. Yeah.
Really?
We got it.
But, literature. So tiny.
It falls out of my hand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I guarantee you can be in our office. At least that from,
I honestly think there's some kind of RF interference going on here, because sometimes the audio is great, other times, no. And it sounds like digital brick, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, they were saying something, somebody said something about there being.
Like there's a search radar swinging around every so often here from an airplane. And it's not tuned.
It just started working. Okay, so I need to find the output of your. Which number is that? That's G. So I'm gonna go directly into the switcher. That's your signal.
yeah.
Okay, so G is the input of the PA. And the output is E. Oh, we need it on the projector, that's right. That's why we're doing that.